Continuing our focus on the aviation sector, anchoring on the recent takeover of Arik Air by AMCON. We're joined this morning by Captain Omar Edemeka, who is an airline pilot and transport consultant. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, John.
Well, about this takeover, is this something that you saw coming? I mean, you're in the industry.
The state of the aviation industry in Nigeria is actually characterized by high debt, lack of foreign exchange. There are some things that are unique to our industry, and of course, when the operating environment is not right, therefore this is bound to happen.
Has it ever been right?
Yes, when Nigeria Airways used to operate, I was not in the industry at that point in time, but it was right. When you look at the history of the industry at that point in time, things were right. Nigeria Airways operated for close to 40 years or more before the airline went down.
So is this a peculiar case for Nigeria? And if it is, does that suggest to you that perhaps more than just Arik will have to face the same fate?
Yes, that has been the trend. You know, if you look at the trend of the industry, Captain George said something to the National Assembly Aviation Committee. He said, I don't know his source of data, but he said that over 40 airlines had actually closed down in the last 50 years in Nigeria. And so for you to, if you cannot measure, of course you cannot control. So if you have the data, then you'll be able to say something tangible about the situation. So of course this is the trend. And Arik, to me, is no surprise because it's just going the way of aero contractors.
Speaking of which, you know, we've seen, as you highlighted, aero contractors. They were off for a while. They're back in operation, but not with as many fleets as they had. And now AMCON has taken over Arik. Is this going to provide or achieve the necessary objectives to bring the airline back?
Don't forget that both airlines actually had huge amount of debt, and in such a case AMCON bought over this debt. That's the history of what happened to both airlines. AMCON came in and bought over this debt, appointed a receiver manager to take over this debt from both airlines, and at the end of the day, when the receivers manager appointed, I expect the receiver manager to quickly sit down and then try to do a turnaround. Then why do you appoint a receiver manager? You actually do receivership because you want to avoid liquidation. It's just simple, because you want to avoid the airline from going to bankruptcy and eventually closing down. So what you do is that you quickly appoint a receiver manager, okay, and then you set the turnaround process in place. You set the turnaround process in motion. And how do you do this? You either choose to bring a core investor to buy up this debt and reinvest, or you put an in-house team together to turn around the airline.
And that's speaking about the
this is
when
the
they
approach.
do their due diligence.
Yeah, no, it's when the turnaround team comes in. Now the turnaround teams will have to quickly sit down and do a due diligence of the airline. I expect them to quickly sit down, because if you read in the papers, the debt profile itself the debt profile of Arik is in controversy now.
Some say
some say 90 billion, and some say 300 billion. So I expect the new team to come in and quickly sit down and look at the debt portfolio. Not only the debt portfolio, but also study the trend to see what was this debt 5 years ago, What was the debt 4
That's
years
from
ago?
2012 up
From
until
2012
2016.
to 2016, at least 5 years, if not extended to like 10 years.
Can we extend also to other airlines, for instance, if the Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria decides to do that, will that be a step in the right direction to also assess other airlines?
Well, are the airlines under receivership? They are not. If they are under receivership, then you need to have a strategic model or a strategic approach to bring them out of bankruptcy. Receivership means it's a kind of close to bankruptcy. That's what it means, because if you have a debt of 300 billion as claimed by AMCON, it therefore means that you are close to being bankrupt.
Talking about bankruptcy and the debt.
Yeah.
I was talking about the bankruptcy and the debt here. Is it possible to break down the debt profile to areas that probably the monies were spent on within that period?
The second thing that the team need to do is to quickly sit down and then look at the different portfolio, the proportion of debt owed by various, like for fueling, to the service providers.
That's the debt proportion with respect to the creditors.
Yes, the debt proportion. So we quickly look at it. Who and who do you owe? How did this debt come about? Because if you don't have an understanding of how the debt came about in the first place, then you will not be able to solve the debt issue.
Okay.
Some debt may be growing trend. So if you look at the trend of the debt, some debt may be growing, while some may be static, and some may
just like
even
the
be
ones
receding.
that you have on the
Yes.
screen there. I can
So we
see
quickly
fuel. I can see the maintenance and service providers.
Yeah. So
could you explain what you mean by those slides?
what that means is that AMCON claims that they are being owed 135 billion
On its own?
Yes, so we know
alone is being owed 135
5 billion.
So that means the rest of the 300 they are saying the airlines owing could be spread amongst the other four.
Other creditors like fuel suppliers, maintenance organizations, service providers. Service providers include FAN. You know, we hear the noise every day, or between FAN, NCA not being paid. So I expect the new team in ARIC to be able to sit down to understand the debt profile and the history of the debt.
What does that then do to the debt ratio? Because if we don't know how much was invested by the
Owners of the
owners of the business. So if Eric is coming, I beg pardon, if AMCON is putting in, say, 135, does that mean that they now own the airline?
Well, there's what is called debt to equity ratio. The higher that number is, the less share you now have. So that's why I expect the new team to do a due diligence to understand how much equity the legacy owners. Legacy owners is of ARIC is actually the family that own the business. So I expect the new team to sit down and then do a thorough due diligence to know what equity is left. Then after then, I also expect them to look at the history as we have just seen in the slide, to know who owns what, and then to sit down, have a discussion with all their creditors, because you will agree with me that because of this change in management, there's some kind of erosion of confidence with creditors. For example, if the team don't do that, their fuel creditors will come up one day and just stop operations, stop supplying them because there's a change of management. So I expect them to have a meeting, and after then, I expect the team to, after due diligence, then to look at the financials, to look at the profit and loss account for the last 10 years, because the aim will be to cut costs. But don't forget,
So that's where they identify the cost drivers?
Yes, these are cost drivers in any airline. Don't forget, to make profit in any airline, you need the passenger numbers, you need the price, and then you need...
They can get that from the fact that they say they got, what, 55% market share?
The ARIC presently now has 55% market share, but market share does not translate to profit because the price may not be right. You may have 55% market share, but your pricing may not be right. So one of the things that I expect the new team to look at, I expect the new team, since they have the advantage of 55% market share, this is number. There's a correlation between passenger number and market shares. But I expect them to look at the prices, the ticket price. I expect them to do some kind of route analysis, because some things may be hidden to them. This 55% market share, it may surprise you that if you look at the data, it may just be from 3 or 4 routes, and then the rest of the 20-something routes may not be doing well.